Greetings. Let me take you back to 1964 and talk about the movie Marnie, directed by the one and only Alfred Hitchcock. And previously, I did mention that he is my favorite director. Add to that, my favorite actor, who is Sean Connery. Adding those two together in a classical movie gives us Marnie. Now, back in 1964, Sean Connery was buzzing with fame, obviously because of his role as the secret agent James Bond. At that time, he was at his peak. And so Alfred Hitchcock really wanted him to star alongside Tippi Hedren in the film Marnie. Now, Alfred Hitchcock also worked with Tippi Hedren in a year prior in the movie The Birds, another one of Hitchcock's horror films. Marnie, however, is a completely different take. What I like about it is that it's a psychological thriller and a social drama. It also dives deep into a character study, sort of like a case report, so to speak. Naturally, it revolves around the character Marnie, played by Tippi Hedren. Now, Marnie is quite a complex character, and she's, from the beginning of the film, we see that she suffers from negative aspects to her personality. The film establishes early on that she's a thief, scam companies. She poses as someone who wants to work there. She does get hired, and then after 2 or 3 months of work, she robs the company of their savings. And so immediately we take this picture of this personality. As the movie goes on, Hitchcock starts to expose other factors in her personality. For example, we find that she has fear. She has a panic attacks that are triggered by, for example, the red color, basically blood, storms, and also she has a fear from being approached by men. So from the start, early on, we find that she is a complex character with certain psychological issues. Enter the charming and handsome Mark, a very successful businessman, very rich individual. He is widowed, but he is very successful. He comes across Marnie, who also is applying for a job in his company. Now, his manager doesn't like Marnie, but as his boss, Mark got interested in her. Probably he was enchanted, allured by her charm and beauty, but at the same time, like us, the viewers, he was attracted to her personality. He felt that there was something unique about her, and that's why he was attracted to her. So the story goes on, and at the end of the day, she tries to rob Mark or his company, so to speak, but he catches her red-handed. And he confronts her, and then he gives her two options. Either I'll call the police and bye-bye, or I'll give you a way out. Marry me. So he proposed that he marries her. And of course, she has no choice but to agree. The movie then delves deep into how Mark is trying to be a good husband and at the same time trying to cure Marnie from her psychological traumas or issues. I found that interesting. A lot of us like to help others, most likely our loved ones, and we try our best to try to understand their issues. But I felt like Mark went a few steps further. He basically assigned himself as her therapist, and I think that was a big mistake from his side. It's always better to have someone neutral, someone from the outside to help problems within couples or families or all these relationships. So he tried to work as a therapist, and maybe that's where Hitchcock got it wrong, and the writing didn't do it, get that right. I think the best course of action would have, for him, was to take her to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Now, I have to be fair to say that he did, in the movie, propose to her or suggest to her to take it to a psychiatrist, but she was refusing. Now, after the marriage, he tried to approach her. He wanted to basically engage with her, but she was completely refusing and avoiding. Again, this was quite a trauma for both of them, and specifically for him, because he wanted to get closer to her, but she was pushing him away. So, what was wrong with Marnie? Was she having phobias, multiple phobias, phobias from blood, phobias from storms, and phobia from men? Or did she have a much more deep-rooted problem, something from the inside? And that's where Mark starts to investigate and search and try to help his beloved wives come over her traumas. And at the end of the day, it was proposed that she was suffering from a post-traumatic stress disorder. Apparently, when she was younger, and the movie does explore that, her father passed away, her mother were engaged in uh, bad sexual behaviors with men, and one of these men, at a certain night, tried to attack both the mother and Marnie when she was a child. And so the mother tried to retaliate. He was basically aggressive and strong, and he hit them both. But then Marnie managed to get a knife and defend herself and her mother, and then she killed that individual. Now, all this was very traumatic for her as a child, and so there was blood when she killed him. When she killed him, there was a storm at the same time, and of course, he was a man who was trying to attack them. So every time she gets triggered by these events or anything that reminds her of that, she develops this emotional instability. And she does have a part from post traumatic stress disorder that we call dissociative amnesia. So part of the trauma was not clear for her. And so she was really not remembering important parts of the trauma, but she does remember the triggers and events. And that's why she was psychologically traumatized. And definitely, someone like her, if they come to our clinic, they would definitely require an extensive psychotherapy and perhaps even psychopharmacology. So that's why I think Marnie is one of my favorite films. But again, if we come to it as a picture, as Alfred Hitchcock used to call them, used to call films as pictures. It lacked the entertainment factor, I guess, to the normal viewer. So movies or scripts usually have three acts. The first act, where they introduce the characters, like what happened in Marnie, the first act was fantastic. The second act, where they introduce a problem or an event. And then the third act is where there is a resolution. The second act in Marnie is, what is the problem? So her character is suffering from problems, and the major problem is, after her marriage with Mark, they're not getting engaged in sexual activity, like basically in marriage. And that's where it's all revolves around. And then Mark trying to resolve her psychological issues. Again, if you think about it, there's no elements of urgency, and it's not a major event. And so when the resolution comes, albeit from a psychiatric point of view, it did expose her diagnosis and what she's going through. It didn't have that closure that most movies have. So again, that's why critically, the movie didn't do as well. A lot of viewers, a lot of people, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the video, that they don't consider Marnie the best of Hitchcock work. Definitely, he had so many other movies. Actually, most of Alfred Hitchcock's films are fantastic. And to me, as I mentioned, Marnie is still one of those. But when they rate his films, I think Marnie usually is not on the top, because it lacks that part of an important threat, and a feeling of urgency is lacking. Otherwise, it's fantastic, very well acted, very well directed, obviously. And so I highly recommend this film.